So this pattern of, or this pathway, today's a restorative pathway, is going to start with something very familiar for you all, which is a reclining cobbler's pose. But we're going to do some arm layers and arm threading. So I want you to have your sandbag at your lower basin, not onto your ribs. So you're going to sit in front of your bolster. You have your knees propped up on your blocks. And I suppose the knees could be like this way and a little bit higher on the block, so that's easier. But if you are going to use your belt here, you're going to buckle up so you have a big loop, as you know. Reach it over the tops of your feet and cinch it up so the buckle is next to your hip. So those of you that use two sandbags today will likely have your sandbags on the upper inner thigh. So you probably don't want your belt to be, in a spot where it's going to dig in. So I have mine kind of right next to my right hip. Now, sand is going to go on top of the feet. Feet are together. Soles of the feet are actually relatively connected for me today. It's unusual. Maybe it's going to be a good day. My feet connect in my yoga class. So I'm going to lift up my blocks so they're pretty cozy for my thigh muscles. And, in some way when you're working your legs, we're going to do some standing work today as well, is I want you to have your legs so they really get kind of fluffed out in the beginning. Okay, so they get kind of maneuvered and circulation is abound. So lower back, so you've got a nice blanket on top, so it could be in a flat quarter fold. You could roll it up at the neck, but feel where the knees are relaxed. So the legs should feel that they can completely feel supported by the props. Okay, and that includes the feet having that sand. If you have, again, the two sand, you put one on each inner thigh. So start opening up in the hips. And then we'll take the right arm across the upper chest, so across the collarbones, and bring that left hand to the right elbow. And you're going to be feeling, obviously, your deltoid stretching here. But when you hold on to that elbow with your left hand, I want you to work on increasing that load of stretch through the upper right arm. Yeah, so just let your eyes relax back and get a feel for the touch with the hand onto the arm. And is it actually kind of digging into a spot of your arm? Or can you almost kind of smooth that arm like you're kind of massaging it a little bit, the right arm towards the left to stretch out? I feel the shoulder, but I also feel the inside of my right arm a little bit, right up near the armpit. So it's kind of an interesting sensation that's a little tense. So we're going to work with those areas. Okay, now let the left hand hold onto the right elbow and move that right elbow up so it's behind your head, and then hold onto the left elbow with the right hand. So you're in a elbow kind of crisscross here. So you have your hands holding your elbows back overhead. Yeah, do any fidgeting you need. If the blocks start to feel like they kind of dig into your legs, and you could contour them, kind of put them a little bit on their side. And then this beginning breath phase of the inhale, filling the lungs. And the exhale, emptying and letting go. You really center where the rib cage has that expansion. And if you feel as if the movement is at the abdomen, that would be great. So you're focusing on diaphragmatic breathing, strengthening and being able to isolate the breath in the body. Let the hands release the grip of the elbows and reach your hands together. Just interlace your fingers, turn the hands inside out, and feel that movement of the arms back behind you. And they may slightly stretch in the wrist and the arms. Change the arm crossing now, so you'll bring your arms back center, release the clasp. Left arm crosses really at the top of your chest area. Now, some of us might find a little more comfort if the arm is lower. Some might find it's exactly the same as the last side. And I'm actually trying to keep my spine centered on my bolster and that crossover. If you're not sure if your left hand should be kind of relaxed or limp, that would be a good choice, but just to let the left hand release its engagement. And when that arm is crossing over, it could feel also, quite tense into the left deltoid. I find this is a little bit of pull on the arm outside, a little bit on the inside. So when we take the right hand to the left elbow and reach that left elbow overhead now, so go ahead and change the arm connection, the kind of cross reach behind you. So some people call this crisscross elbow crisscross. So when you move your arms back, it might feel like they're kind of held against your head, right? Like as if do you have enough flexibility to get your arms there? If not, that's okay. You do the best you can. If you can't hold the elbows, you kind of hold your forearms or your two arms. Forearms would be too many arms. Okay, you can hardly figure out what to do with the two of them. So when you get a hold and you're moving the circulation through your arms, breathe. Maybe the breath moves a little higher up into your ribs than before, or when it was more belly. So either is fine. The whole time the hips are slowly beginning to loosen up, kind of trick them. And then as you release that hold, move the arms down and take a few moments, about half a minute or so here, just settling on the simplicity of this shape. Notice the pathways of circulation in the legs, in the waist. And certainly through the chest and the arms. So breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And habits come along often on this breath, where you tend to pull in on the inhale on the abdomen. So just keep that reminder going. Inhale, belly relaxed. And exhale, belly towards the spine. When bored, this is a good focus. Inhale, belly relax. Exhale, belly to spine. Okay, so well, first, if you have sand on your legs, you slide that away and then unbuckle and motion the blocks just a little bit out to the side. This would be a good time if your ball somehow rolled away, you'd want to corral it back in closer to the home space, the landing. And then you'll take that belt, I think just shift it away, but keep it easy reach. If you got sand on the feet, you just push it over to the side. And we'll winch away for the knees. So This is quite a prominent arch in our spine. So you want to have the arms, they kind of feel like these little wings here when the elbows are jabbed near the side of your bolster. But you want to keep those wings so that you stay connected to your bolster. So it feels like you're swishing your knees side to side, your feet are stepped apart. How far apart is really up to you. I don't want you to feel like you have to have them in a really wide stance. Go comfortable. And then as the knees shift side to side, then you feel the kind of unwinding here of the legs, a little bit of tinkering into that space. So then as you bring your knees back center, walk the feet in, reassess where you are on the bolster, meaning you might have to get a little bit cozier with it. I know the lower spine space can kind of feel like it lifts or it slides down. So you want to feel like the back of your chest area really is on the bolster. The upper back is steady. Take a ball, place it up to the outer edge of your left hip, and then lift the right foot, cross it to the left knee. And I would push the ball in so you really do feel that next to the left upper outer leg, maybe upper hip, but mine's at the kind of greater trochanter. And then you push it in so that when your legs are in a cross position, the ankle is to the left knee, not over the leg. Let the legs tilt over to the left. And then you don't have to hold your knee with your left hand, but I feel circulation kind of boost if I hold my knee. Like it, all of a sudden it's a little bit more interesting. Like, oh, I feel my hip. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for, is sensation. And what you do with that, like, do you feel like you have to get out of it, or why is it so intense? Well, part of that is that production, right, of circulation around the joint and lubricating that area. So you want to feel that sensation, let it be steady, and then let your head relax back. Sometimes you have to remind yourself to relax your head. And then maybe that lets your head nod a little side to side, or you close your eyes. And you kind of feel that circulation in your right hip. If you can just let the breath come in and out, passing time, that's what we do with the poses for our bodies. And then we feel connected to our body. Our mind feels connected. Okay, now if you're trying to get a little bit more intense, see if you can do a little less, just so that you can still feel that kind of raw stretch into the hip, just not overdoing it. We got a ways to go here. So let go of that knee. If you're holding it, switch sides right away. So right foot down, left foot crosses. And you might have this habit that you almost cross the leg. So you've got to kind of catch it while you can. So hook the foot and then put the ball to the upper outer right thigh. Tilt the weight into that leg, into the ball, I mean. And then maybe, the second side, you might spend some energy on the waist centering, because I don't think you want to do any big twist in your waist here. It's almost as if, if you do a stomach exercise patterns from way back, you used to kind of crunch a lot. You want this area to feel like it's kind of in a mini crunch, barely there, but you feel like there's some radiance of circulation in the mid body. So I want you to just feel it lay back and not try to grip it up. Just let it move with breath. Simple. You could have your left arm stretching back. You could have it down beside you, but let your eyes relax. So I don't feel the ball besides my right leg in any difficult way. It doesn't feel like the more I push into it, it changes. So I think what changes if I pull the leg differently. So the ball will probably stay kind of just the same support. Right? You're not gonna squish it a whole lot more than you start with. So let your body just rely on how much weight you have on the ball. And then if you're carrying into more intensity, you're probably holding on and drawing that leg to the right, the left knee. Outside of the right foot you're resting on. Keep it simple. Breathe. It only helps. At least we remember that saying, huh? There's some memory going on. It's the stuff from way back you remember so well. Okay. So, when there's always a little bit like, when we do the hip crossover towards the end, that's when you kind of lay it all through the leg and the hip joint. It just really, it completes the action. So I don't want you to feel like this is an incomplete experience for the hip. So just kind of notice that when we get to our next little phase, how you complete this type of action as best as you can. Not overdoing it. Like I said, we have a ways to go. So release the knee. It's been released, okay? And then give this a try. Take a block, place it under your pelvis. Oop, there's a belt. Get the belt. That's actually a reminder I could use it. And then slide the blanket just for a moment off of the bolster and stretch the leg straight down. Really reach your arms overhead. If you want to use your belt and hold on to it so you feel like, I got energy moving through me, you can go for that. But really feel the heels press away and the awareness in the whole front zone of length, right? So I'm just kind of visualizing I have a belt, but I don't. It might be helpful, but I'm fine here if it's a moment longer. So feel that reach, that supported elongation, okay? And then relax your arms open, just out to the side, so the back of the hands resting. There might still be kind of a zippy stretch through the chest, kind of like ranges of motion, especially in these bands of chest muscle to shoulder. I mean, that's a connection that has, quite a bit of fibers that get tight from our daily habit of just rounding our body. So work with exaggerating the shoulders back a bit. Nothing wrong with exaggeration at all in this one. My heels are reaching away, so it's almost as if I imagine there's a wall under my feet or a floor, and I'm pushing naturally through it. Okay, and then fold through the knees. So bring the feet so the bottoms of the feet touch down. So you're kind of folding your knees, huh? Take Baddha Konasana one more time. Feet together, knees apart, and it might seem like, it's a little different way to experience the adductors. Maybe more than you did when you had the belt. It might feel a little more vibrant because of the block underneath. Okay, and now kind of visualize if you had a block between your feet. This is another way to do this, but it's too much of a setup for us. We do too many poses, so we won't add that setup, but just imagine there's a block between the feet, how much more stretch that gives the legs. Okay, and then let the knees motion up, the bottoms of the feet push, lift up the hips, slide the block away. We're going to go to sleeping sage. So let's see if we can get our spine that direction. So when your feet are pushing and your hips are just a tad off the ground, you have ability to kind of wag your tail. Right, you got a little wagging room. So good, try to wag your tail to the right and then roll to your left. And then take your body to turn to the bolster and grab the blanket. It was on top, and put it back there on top of the bolster, the back at top end. You could use your ball under your knee. You might not feel like it's that important for this specific shape, okay? So when you're turning, restorative twist, you're trying to open up the shoulder blades. So you're doing the opposite of what you just were doing with your shoulders. So you'll rest your head, turning it to the knees, the direction of the knees. With your, I guess you're not turning your nose down to your knees, but your head rotates. And then relax your eyes like you're taking a nap. Just pretend. Nap, pretend. Feel the breath in your upper back and just expand the breath. If you decide you want to kind of hug your bolster, that might be nice. You can kind of try to get your arms underneath it. Spread the shoulder blades even more. But I want you to feel where that rotation is in the ribs. The right leg can stretch farther down or farther behind you. You could stack the legs. That might feel kind of cozy for your shoulders and back. Give it just a few more moments here. So kind of warming up the back into the spine, into the hip. You know, I kind of feel my upper back. I don't want to say I feel it exactly a certain way, but I feel the awareness there. So as you release this position, you push to come up, we're going to take the bolster and turn it so that it's across, like we're familiar with this. And then we'll add on our blankets so they're both stacked up. So the bottom one you'll kind of flatten it down, so unroll it. And find a block to put behind that blanket, and you'll have your bolster set up in that horizontal track. I like a sandbag and a ball for this one. So you'll add your ball on the inside of the right knee if you choose, and then you'll get your sand. Now, if you had two sandbags, let's say you got out your two, you could stack them up like across. So it's like a litter of sandbags. That's what I think of that. You could put the sand lengthwise, but that might be a little burden on your balance. You might find it falls off and then you have to get back up again. So be sure the knees feel fine. If your knees are feeling a little bit pressure, then you have to adjust your ball or have the knee move a little bit closer to the other leg, the right leg to the right leg closer to the left leg. But as I feel the surface of my ribs stretch, yep, this is kind of a sustained motion. I need to kind of lower the arm, to find I'm releasing. So I've got to find a stopping place for this right hand. So it could be on the block, it could be on the bolster, it could be moving the shoulder back. And you choose the level of focus with your breath that's nearly comfortable. I don't want you just to stress out with it. So if you're over the block here and you're really feeling like that's too much, sometimes the block going higher for me is a little easier in my shoulder. I'm not, when the lower it is, the more you're stretching, you're pushing and pushing. So the higher it is, and let's say it's sort of good but still stressful, a really good option is a chair. You can put your hand up on a chair. That's another really good one for this. If you never tried it, you got to try it sometime. Just to use a folding chair under your hand. Well, that's moving all the furniture around for your yoga practice. Well, why not have one at home? So when you're leaning in, you decide if you want to move your right arm so it's kind of out of the picture of intensity. You can always put it on your side. You're stretching your neck on this pose as well. Make sure your blanket's is high enough so you're comfortable. I don't want you to be overstretching your neck. Okay, and then let your head really get to feel like it's relaxing into the blankets. You always have freedom to move your pose or get out of your pose and repose something else. Repose your pose. Repurpose your pose. Feel the movement in the ribs. expand. And compress. So you can feel that compressing motion, massaging. Stretching the breathing muscles. Yeah, kind of feel the difference from the back and the arms. Right, one arm has a little bit more pulse through it. One is more passive. So one of the reasons we switch these up is we're placing attention on our breathing muscles, kind of the intensity changes. So when you take that right arm off the block, you can leave your props the same for this next one. You'll just move your sand momentarily. We're going to use it on the rib cage, so keep it nearby. And then let the ribs shift down over to the left, so just sink into the bolster. And then when you come up, I want you to move your ball and turn so that you're seated in front of your bolster, just like you were a moment ago. But now when you lower onto your back, you might have to move your blanket a tiny bit so it fits the support for your head, huh? It's not exactly perfect for me. I'm gonna have to keep playing with it till it's good. But you got your support under your head. Now this is Mountain Brook pose. And this is in the Relax and Renew manual, which is kind of the yoga Bible for restorative. So when you're in this shape, you could put a block under your pelvis if it's too much in the breathing muscles, like you feel like you're gasping, which happens if you've had any congestion or anything. You'll find these poses are really difficult to do. So try to practice them so you end up with a strong breathing system, even when you feel fine. When you're not, you notice, oh my gosh, those are intense. So you put your sand on your ribs. Now mine is quite high. It's prominent. It's just basically formed with a bolster, so I'm using that as a guide. But, your feet could be stepping out. Your knees could be together, like it's kind of a teepee pose. I kind of like that. And I'm not so concerned about what to do with my legs. So my feet are a little bit apart. My toes are turned in, knees together. Yeah, and you'll feel the intensity with the sand when it's up here. You're gonna have to make sure it's pretty balanced, You don't have to wear it really high, and you might have it sort of in the middle tundra of your thoracic, okay, of the ribs, thoracic chamber. But let the arms get a feel that they're kind of reaching down to the bolster behind you. They're not on top, they're at the back. Great, and let the weight of your head relax into however it is comfortable in your blankets. Just make it work. Breathe fully, feel the lungs. You almost feel like you're working a breathing machine when you get slow and concentrated. Now, when you bring your knees apart, of course, if you had a block underneath your pelvis, it does make it easier on your spine. It just makes it more easeful and restful. But there's also some benefit, right, to strengthening these opposing structures, right, the ribs and the spine. I mean, they all meet, right? The rib cage meets the mid-spine attachments. So now when we turn, I think this will be delightful. We're going to go a little backwards on the second side with the sage poses. So we already have it set up for the ribs here. So we'll just tip ourselves over, try to roll to our right hip. And you might find, oh, this kind of works okay. I can be like this. Who knows what happened to your block overhead, if it even stayed, was still present or it fell over. You might have to adjust some of these props, like your ball or your block. I think the ball is the one thing you probably didn't have on the last pose. So the ball, and then add that sand. Now I'm a little more tilted to my screen right now, let's see, but you could be a little farther down to the right. I'm working my sandbag very functional today on this side rib space, so it's more on my hip. And if you noticed in the beginning your hip was a little tense or just kind of short, it was short with you. It didn't want to respond very much. It was stiff. Then you might have your sand on your hip for this one, so then when we build to more hip openers, it might be a little more agreeable. But get a feel here where you're on that side sheath of the hip, the right hip bone, right? And let your spine still to get a nice stretch. I feel like you're on your side, balancing to the right side of your brain, breathing through the ribs. You know, feel when you're rotating to the right, you're still in kind of this beginning rotation just to be in this shape. You're halfway turned. And then as you bring the left hand to move the sand, you're going to take that sleeping sage pose, the restorative twist. So this kind of got you halfway there. So move the ball first. That's probably a priority, is to get rid of that. And then turn. And I really like to have my bolster tilted up on my blanket. So I just change it all up a little bit for comfort, and then toss the blanket on top of the bolster on the very top edge, top quarter of it. And then when you turn, you can get a feel. This is a good prep for kind of where we're going with these patterns, but you feel your hands make an imprint. And then you're almost trying to do like an upward facing dog with your rib cage. You're reaching. And then when you land with your ribs on the bolster, these rib spaces probably don't twist so much as you think, right? So they're centered down the bolster, then your head turns. So it's your upper spine, the cervicals that twist. Yep, and if you've ever had one side of your neck not in line with the other side, these poses can be really helpful, these sleeping sages. So let your head turn to the left and relax and feel how much you want to be on the side of your right side of your head. So if I don't turn very far, it sort of jams my neck a little bit as well. So I want to feel a good rotation. Now, if that does not work well for your situation, for whatever reason in your neck, you have to be a little more protective. You can also turn the blanket on top, kind of smash it up, and then you'll put your forehead on the blanket and be here. So you're kind of cuddling with the bolster, forehead down. Yeah, that feels pretty good too. Of course, if you have someone to put sand on your upper back, that would be ideal. So as the spine centers in, you make the choice. If you can have your head turned, I would go with that if you can, just so that the neck gets this circulation blend. And let's just rest here for about another 45 seconds. Just let your body center. Feel how the weight is in that right hip. Okay, it's weight bearing. So when you slide your hands and push down through the imprint of the hands to come up, just kind of feel this rotation. Now, just for functioning and to see and to follow a session, we're going to turn our body the other direction. But fundamentally, if you're at home practicing, you could probably turn to the back of your mat and do cat cow and down dog right here. But for visualizing purposes, I'm going to switch it around. So I'll take the blanket off the top of the bolster. We're going to move our bolster aside. Okay, and then take your blanket to the middle of your mat. Take a seat on top, and then bring your feet behind your blanket and your knees on top. If you've got a block behind you, move it back forward. You'll need it here. And so we'll do a simple kind of rebounding spine practice here. So I want you to have your knees. No, I don't want you to have one knee on and one knee off the blanket, sir. Okay, so hands are, I want this to be a pretty kind of short cat cow, not only short in duration, but you don't have your arms very far. And also, if you're near a wall, be careful here. I don't want you to knock your head into a wall spot. So be far enough back that you'll be safe from any head injuries here. So the fingers span out to make an imprint of your hand. And take a moment here where the toes are under and the spine is rounding. So there's this curling feeling with your feet, but I don't really feel like it's that successful of a foot curling position to me, but I want you to feel the toes under so you can stretch your foot and round your back, chin towards chest, and arch the spine so the tail and the crown of the head move towards the ceiling. Okay, and then take the hands a little farther apart next time you do this one. So round the back, the hands might be at the edge of the mat. Breathe in when you arch the spine. Tail moves away, moves up towards the ceiling. Exhale when you round your back. Chin moves towards the chest. Okay, now find neutral. And then toes under, lift up the knees. And so the pose is sort of a short dog. I mean, if this is not your fullest reach, maybe with your legs or your arms. I mean, to me, it feels actually pretty maximized. I don't know if I can go much farther, but get a feel where it's quite muscular. You can feel your legs, you can feel your arms, and you can feel your circulation in your sinuses in this pose, right? Everything just gets turned upside down. So work on a deep breath. Exhale fully. Exfoliate your lungs. Okay. So now we lower down our knees and we take our hands a little farther forward. And this time you're going to move your hips forward. This way you don't want to be near a wall or too close, and lift it to up dog. Okay, come back to child's pose if you can. So your knees are going to move apart and your toes together and your hips back. Forehead down. Round your back to come back to the up dog so the feet separate. Okay, and you might do these patterns, both of them with your eyes relaxed so that you can really work on the feeling. And the focus is on feeling, moving the hips back. You don't have to sit on your feet. And then moving your spine So the front of the spine, which is the core muscles, are stretching. Okay, so let's take it back to a forward bend. So toes under. I want you to have your belt for this one. Okay, so get a hold of that. So it's near your knees right now. And then come back and walk your feet towards your mat. Towards your blanket. Well, I hope it's on your mat. And you decide on this one. Do you want to stretch your calves a little bit deeper? You can put your the ball of the foot up on the blanket. That kind of has a little bit of a rich stretch in the calf circulation. I kind of feel it's helpful. You're not going to do this with the belt part, but we'll just do this for pure 15 seconds or so for some of you. So feel where the hips are back, right, versus to the ceiling, they're moving back. The neck lowers down, okay? This will be, a little bit of balance coordination to cycle through these. And then you'll walk your feet off of your blanket, not off of your mat. Okay, take a belt. It doesn't have to be buckled up, but you're going to put it behind your legs, behind your feet is fine. And you'll slide your hands apart on the belt so that you're holding quite a bit of it, right? You're pushing out until your arms are wider than shoulder width apart. Hold the belt till the palms face forward towards your feet. And then you'll move your arms back, hand up and over, well, maybe not overhead, but over your back space towards the mat. So let your head release. Breathe. You can roll your shoulders, kind of massage into the grittiness of our shoulder cavity. I know it can feel like it's stiff here. You can have your hands as wide as you want. Of course, if you go far and farther out, you're going to lose the amount of belt you can traction, and it might not feel as much of a stretch. So I would work on kind of pulling the belt like you're trying to pull it apart, like a Dynaband, like a TheraBand. And if you had a TheraBand, it would be good for this one, actually. Okay, and then as you let go of the belt, bring your arms down so they dangle, or you hold your elbows like we did in the beginning, but you choose. You might be feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna make it through. I'll let my arms just dangle. I like to hold my elbows. I feel a little bit of purpose with that for the definition. But then you got to crisscross and do the other side at some point. It's not fair to just pull one side. The feet are pretty much flat. They're parallel. They're about a little wider than hips distance. And let the brain release. If this is making you all out of sorts, you can't tolerate this forward bend, come back down to the blanket with under your knees and take child's pose. Okay, now release any clasp and then bending through the legs. We'll walk our hands forward, and if the belt's kind of on your path, I move it aside because I want you to actually use this walk forward with your hands for momentum and step the right foot between and get some blocks under the hands and make a proper balance so that you're in a pretty good mid lunge. It's not too high, it's not too low, but you feel where your blocks are under your hands and you kind of put them. I have to go pretty high on my blocks. I mean, I wish they were a little higher, but I could add a chair, I suppose. That would be my best. But we get a feel of our parallel right foot, so the toes forwards. I mean, most of them seem to turn that direction. And then feel where muscles kind of come in here, where they stretch. So you're going to work through that lunge. The right knee kind of pokes forward, kind of pokes front from the hip. Don't poke fun at your knee. And then lean back. So I find this is leaning. I'm going to push my right foot down, bottom of the base of the foot, and put some stride into my hip moving back, and then alternate. Lift up into this low lunge. So move the left knee a little farther down next time. and then back, toes up on right foot. So you're basically lubricating the hip joint, the back leg, and the right knee. So I would be cautious not to overly lunge here. So if you feel your right knee is moving over the toes, too far angled, then you have to back up and scoot your left foot farther back. Good. And then lean back, toes up. Flex the foot. Come back forward through that lunge. Give it a try. Lower the back knee to the blanket. Yay. That feels nice. Have that complete support of the knee down. You get to decide on how far the knee kind of has swung back to stretch the full hip flexor here. So when we get into our hip work, I think it's pretty crucial, since we're going to be simple with it, but to maintain that focus here through the front of the left thigh. And I let it stretch. Now, farther down with my blocks might make it more interesting. I'm not so sure though. If I was to put my hands on my right leg, it would make it really interesting. So the farther down I would go on my blocks. I think that's a little easier, but I don't know about that, because the hip, the left side kind of tries to suck up to the pose, but then it wants to relax into it. Okay, let's take this one, because I think some of us will find this is a little easier. I find this easier, the other one much more difficult. So tilt back your hips, toes up on the right foot, and then see if you can lean down. So this might mean you go without your blocks, or you use them. And lean down, so you're trying to get your head to your right leg. No prizes. Right, the prize is that you achieve a little bit, and that can be kind of nice to feel that extreme. Maybe you're a little bit higher and your foot is still flexing, you're getting something. You can hold on to the bottom of that right foot and stretch your calf. That feels nice. I like that. Yeah, if you notice you're turning your toes in to stretch, then you got some work to do, because this is my habit too. And that's not the best thing for my calf. I'm not getting a full calf stretch that way. Okay, now let go. And let's swap the leg lunge. Okay, so let's keep it simple. Left foot steps to the right, right foot steps back. Keep it fairly mid lunge, so you're not dropping out of it quite yet, because we're going to do that alternating flush for the muscles. So we feel the knee. I'm assuming you probably don't necessarily feel your knee, but you feel the muscles on the back of the leg. And then as you move back, your toes are up. We're going a little quicker on this side. Lunge. So try to feel, the interesting part of this might be your back foot lifting, kind of pushing, springing forward, and then motioning back. Yeah, enjoy using your feet bare, right, without a shoe, because you're getting some capacity through the foot itself. The amazing amount of bones in your feet that get stuck in little coffins during the day, or feet. Okay, so let them move around and feel them for the class. Maybe people are wearing foot coffins during class. I don't know. Maybe that feels good. But shift back. And then this time we come forward and we lower down the back knee and relax the toes. Now you could keep your toes under. Some people like that. It feels kind of nice too. I get a lot of stretch in my hip flexor for this one, the back quad. So I'm fine just feeling this. I don't need more. It'd be nice to have more distraction, but get a feel for that left knee moving itself forwards. Yeah, if your shoulders get really boxed up and everything grips up because you're suffering, you might take your blocks a little higher. Get a different breath pace going, feel more arch in the spine. Some people might bring their hands onto their leg. right? This used to be called King Arthur pose. We're here. This is the name of it long ago. But we're basically in this lunge. And so get a feel when that thigh behind you, right, when it's really marinating in this shape. It's the stomach meridian. So I always find this quad stuff interesting. It's either pretty dull during the day or it's really upset in these pose patterns. Okay, now you ease up on it, right? Now you lean back, use your blocks under your hands, or if you're fine with the ground, that's okay. You don't have to have your hands on the blocks. And bring your head towards the left leg. And get a feel, maybe you squirm around in your torso. All things are fine. You know, if you want to move around your ribs and get a feeling of that length of the left leg from the heel and all these different intersections and pathways. And then there's that roundabout of the back of the left knee, all the circulation that swoops around from our calf up into the hamstring. You know, you want that circulation to feel just kind of smooth, nothing overdone in the back of the knee. Yeah, we don't like to slam that area, right? We want it to be just kind of circulating freely. Okay, so when I get a feel here, what we're going to work towards now is let's take our, let's see. Okay, let's move our bolster in. You're going to bend your knee, of course, to get this. You can't quite do everything with a straight leg, I don't think, or a straight face. Come back to a lunge, walk your left foot over to the right for pigeon. And, you know, you can push your bolster any way, back or forward. You might customize it, right? So like, well, some days my blanket, I like to have two behind me. Some days that feels better. My knee's farther over the bolster. So for me on this moment, I have my knee farther down versus kind of up. The blocks are really helpful. Or if you go farther into it, you might take your blocks over to the right side of your direction here. So angle, and that way, when you lower down your elbows, your blocks aim kind of towards 1 o'clock. You can feel your left hip. It has to kind of work its way to the bolster, doesn't it? The left seat. Yep, so you could be that direction. If that's just so much, you could stay with it forward. This is probably just fine. This would be simple minded here. Yeah, if you're not so sure, feel the weight balance from right to left side. Feel if the back knee wants to bend. I don't think it wants to, but it makes an interesting layer of connection to the left hip. And just let that right thigh then relax. And the waist relax. And breathe into the back. Good. Just center yourself. See if you can manage the focus. Even if it's just swirling around, breathing, hip, stretching, back stretching. This is a back stretch too. Definitely the back of your hip. Okay, now when you feel the weight kind of crushing into your left hip, I would say the word crushing because it kind of, you're kind of smushing into it. Smushing is a little kinder frame of thought. So smushing to the left hip. And then I want you to kind of swap the legs. So you're going to swap to the right side. So you're going to swoosh into the left. And then when you bring the right leg forward, see if you can swap around. So your feet kind of get active with it too. Swishing. And then come to that right pigeon pose. We come into it a little easier on this side because we're just sitting on our bolster. And then, it is a sitting pose, isn't it? So the farther I am up on this bolster now, some of us might find this is just too much stretch. So if that happens to you someday, you can always use your blanket. I'll just demonstrate this, although most of you are going to stay right where you are with your pigeon, but just something to know if you're teaching this or something. You can have another blanket here like that, so you have a little more height. Just make it easier, just easier. It's not quite like doing this with a chair, but it's close. And some people even put the blanket so it's just under the right buttock. Right, so you would change it up. So you just have it curled up under that right side and take a seat like that. And then this left thigh has an easy time. It's like, oh, I don't have to work so hard. So that makes it so you don't work as hard with it, but maybe it kind of gets you to crack into that area a little bit. Some of us, this just takes a lot of work just to get here. And if I lower down, I have that much hip height. Yeah, it's kind of soothing. So one never knows. If you take time off from doing the poses, sometimes it's better to get some support to get back into them. I certainly had that experience not doing some poses for weeks. I was like, oh, my body's still trying to return. Especially my hamstrings and, from having, forward bends and stuff. They're just the calves. I don't know if I'll get back to it. Okay. So get a feel for where your direction is. If you're lifted up, this feels like an inversion with all this height under my hip. I'm going to kind of take it because it's making it comfortable. It's okay to be comfortable. And then when the spine is in this design of leaning, you can feel like it's not a bad spine position, right? I'm still stretching out of my spinal column. I'm extending, I'm not dumping out because this is still lengthening, right? Okay, so let's come out of this side. Let's come out. We're gonna actually go to the wall, I think. Okay, so what I want you to do is take away you're gonna keep all your props probably, but come out of this pigeon, okay? And then make your way to a wall. And I want you to have your mat, your bolster, have one blanket, certainly have your bolster on the right side of your mat. And the key today on this one is we're going to do a completely different balance with our crossovers. It's going to be new, little new stuff. The stuff you'll remember from way back, but it'll have some newness to it. So have a sandbag, have your blocks, have your ball. I don't think you'll need your belt. That's one thing you could let go of. Okay, so scoot up towards the wall so your feet are at the base. Are we there? We're getting there. Yeah, no stress. Okay. All right. And I have my toes kind of stretched up. I like to work on my feet as much as I can because I realize they could use that love. And then as I step my feet up onto the wall, this probably automatically feels a little bit more comfortable. Okay, for your back. It makes an imprint on your muscles in your back. So let's just notice the simple. Now, if my feet are up, it's also different dynamic in my breathing muscles. Like if my feet are down, this is just not as interesting here in my ribs. It's a little more vibrant. So what I'll have you do is add your ball. Okay, you're going to add it between the knees. Your feet are up at the wall and you're in this kind of right angle. Now, you don't have to get like a mirror to make sure you're perfect, but I want you to feel like your back of your pelvis is comfortable. So if you're too far away, it's going to feel a strain when you're just in the first shape. Okay, so with that ball between, everyone has a ball in this group, I think. Yeah, okay, we're going to do some self-massage with it then. So squeeze into the ball. This is not self-massage moment here. This is pelvic floor work. Squeeze into the ball and then release the squeeze. You keep the ball there. Stretch your arms overhead, okay? Squeeze the ball with the leg muscles and release. Okay, inhale, squeeze. Exhale, release. Inhale, squeeze. Exhale, release. Okay, now push into your feet, of course. Lift up your hips. And that's a curling action through the spine. Now, if you have a blanket, it's going to feel even more pronounced. So some of you might keep your blanket now, some might push it back. It's okay if you do either way, okay? Whichever feels comfortable. Now try to keep your arms overhead when your spine lowers back down. So you're trying to get some even stretch in the arms as well. And for some of us, this is a stretch in our arms. And then as you bring your hips back up, alternate lifting and lowering, like you're doing a massage through the spine. And just keep that repetition going and be very guided with the movement in both sides of the spine. It's not just one-sided. That's a tricky one to feel that two-sided. So when you lower down your spine, good. Move your knees to your chest and then take the ball. And I want you to put your feet back at the wall. And then you'll take the ball under the left buttock. So it's the glute medius. So if you were to put it underneath that left buttock, it's kind of higher on the back of the buttock. So it feels like it's the connector almost to your hip. And you want to massage. So you could actually go both sides on this one when you have your feet on the wall. It's probably a little easier to do that. But you probably will start with that left buttock and then just massage around. You could put your foot down on the ground and massage a little bit more into the lateral side of the hip. You choose, but having your feet back at the wall helps you move it to the other buttock. And then again, you can put your foot down and massage. But you can squish around on the ball. You want to smush the ball or squish the ball as much as possible. So it's a balance between body weight and movement. And what I find interesting is if my feet are on a bolster or the wall, I can really get my body weight into the ball. And then the movement is my own, energy cycle moving the ball. I'm moving my body on top of that, I think is maybe the accurate expression. But if it feels better to kind of smush the ball around to the side of your hip and that area is just sort of responds, then do that. And mine felt like at the beginning when I was just flat on it, it didn't feel that good. So now I'm more on the side. Feels like I'm getting a little bit more of a massage into my glute. So that's what we want to do is the glutes. Glute free. Free the glutes. Okay. All right. I should unmute everybody so we can hear the sounds. I won't do that. Okay, don't unmute yourself for that reason. Okay, now come around back to center, move the ball aside, take a block, lower your spine just for a moment so you can get back to your feet comfortably at the wall. Push into the feet, into the wall, lift up the hips, and then put a block into the pelvis. So it could be low, mid, or at the highest height. Now, if you have interest in that higher height, but you can't quite get the block pointed up and it's just a little painful, then you would just take the 2 blocks at the mid height and you could keep your feet at the wall. Actually, sorry, not the mid height, but the flat height. Stack them, 2 stacked blocks, and make sure your head is comfortable on the blanket. I'm going to slide my blanket a little farther down. So it's right at that neck base, and then my feet at the floor, next to the wall, right at the wall. I know if you have the block highest it can go, it will feel like a little bit more stretch in your hip flexors, and it has an achievement feeling. But this is pretty good, 2 flat blocks. It's a little more comfortable for my lower back. So I'm going with it. Shoulder blades pin in towards the spine. So you actually try to kind of lift up the heart that way. And then let the spine into the neck release. Take a few moments here. with the hips in that support of the block. Breathe deep. Strengthen your lungs. Exhale completely. Yeah, avoid turning your head side to side on this one. Be a little cautious for your neck because it's so flexed. Noticing where the balance is at the block, and the muscles around that area might feel kind of a radiance, which could feel like it's a little stressful. I want you to ease that up by putting your feet back up at the wall. And then once the feet are at the wall again, see if you can release the back of the pelvis. So I have to push maybe 40% into the wall. And then as you push into your feet, you're going to keep trusting that wall. I hope you're at a wall that's sturdy. It's a certified wall. Push into your feet and then slide the block away. You got to use your lift of your feet at the wall so that you can comfortably get that block away. Okay? No blocks needed here. Spine lowers down. Let your hands relax maybe on your hips or on the floor or overhead. Could be any of those three places. Spine inches down. Okay, now slide the blanket back and you. Okay, we're going to do this final set. I like this one. So the right leg is straight and the left leg crosses over. Okay, I'm thinking about starting it this way. So up in the air. So you're going to put the ball to that sacrum and use your sand on the outer left thigh. Okay, so when you emphasize this support on the outer leg, you're going to let the left arm open, but make sure that ball feels like it's a little bit of an anchor. Okay, sand on the left outer leg, kind of push it around until you feel like there's it stimulates circulation, right? So you want to feel like if it's farther to the knee, you might feel better, might feel like it's continuous awareness there. If it's right on the hip, it might feel more controlled for you. So if your right hand can relax on your rib space, right between the rib and the belly, and just feel the breath there. Should be in more of a soft cavity with your right hand. You don't want to have it like right on the hard ribs, more in the soft space between. Because then you notice that you have those spaces. I think that's helpful. Between all the tense areas. And you want them to be relaxed with the breathing. Short focus here on the hip. Now feel how you start that sensation out of the hip, left hip. And then we'll move the ball and we'll take the sand to the top of the right thigh. Okay, so what you'll do is slide the sand and then you roll into your back space and then the sand on the top of the right thigh. And then reach your block, place it behind the left leg. I know the sand might get a little floppy. And let the left leg stretch up. No belt, A belt. If you need to use a belt, you find, oh, I really prefer one under the foot, you could. That's fine, but I want you to really work on the muscles that you were just working around, that were on the side of the leg, you were stretching out of the back. And the foot doesn't have to be specifically flexed. You might let it be passive, because that's just a lot of energy to keep stressing out in the ankle, huh? But the sand I find a little challenging to keep on my right leg. You want your foot to touch the wall. That's kind of critical here. That right foot. So you're feeling all these alignment curiosities here through your legs. This will be nice before we get our legs at the wall. It'll be really a good pattern for our leg muscles. Get that full circulation. So try to hold out. If you want to make it more challenging, yeah, you could turn your block so it's a little bit more to reach to, right, to flip it. And then the block is at that mid setting. That is a little challenging for my arms and back, but if you have longer arms, it probably is much better, right? And then if that leg is just kind of neutral, you don't have to push it any further. Feel when that left knee bends. Breathe. Pull on the back of that left leg with that block. And then take the block aside and take the sand away. And bring your feet on the ground and take your bolster to the left side before you get crossed over with it. Before you get too crossed here, feel your feet on the ground. Feel the neutrality of the spine so it's not rocking too much. It's just, you can feel the back of the pelvis on the ground, slight arch. Let the left leg stretch down and then cross the right leg over to the bolster, okay? So you can feel your natural arches, I think, is what we're trying to focus on from your foot to your spine. You're just a bunch of arches, okay? Just a bunch of monuments. And then place the sand on the outer right thigh and open out that right arm. It doesn't feel like it's peeled open, but you can kind of feel the circulation dynamic from the hip, through the waist, in through the chest. Yeah, and enjoy just feeling that circulation. Let your head roll to the right. You're noticing where you're kind of cranking around in your body. Some places might be a little responsive to the pressure you're putting on it. And some may enjoy just that you're taking time out for practice. That's probably enough already, isn't it? Yep. Okay, now slide the sand. Actually, you have to move the ball first and then the sand to the left side. Yeah, I seem to have an easier time of this if my sand is closer to my knee. Actually, that's maybe not the truth of it, is it? Maybe top of the thigh. You have to kind of finagle this one around a little bit till you get established. Probably getting your foot to the wall is key too. Really feeling that foot and the wall, and then the block to the back of the right leg. And then you feel those defining sensations of the wall. Well, if it's the sensation is not a wall, but the front of that left thigh, and then when the right leg stretches up into the foot. It might be shaky. You know, this hamstring, this kind of little bulb at the back of the right leg, it might feel a little bit of pressure trying to get that to stretch. in this range. You'll find out in the final pose next, right, how that sensation is resolving itself. But give it a few more moments here. If your back feels a little bit tilted, like kind of cattywampus, work with pushing a little more into the wall. You don't have to yank the right leg that far back to get much out of this. I find a passive foot is good. You could circle your foot as well. Yeah, you really have a lot of freedoms, I think, with the home practice structure. You can take some of these ideas and then branch off or not, or be sedate in some of them. When you slide your block away and your right knee bends, slide the sand away, and then bring both knees in for a moment and hug them in towards the chest, rock side to side, and then go to one side and come up. And let's take our way to the wall with our bolster now at the wall. So push it up right against it. There's no space between the bolster and the wall. You got your sand, you got your blanket. If you're going to use your second blanket, you can have it on your core if you're cold. And then I want you to add the body weight on the bolster. So kind of think about this. When you sit your seat to the wall, you are truly trying to get your tush to the wall, your sitting bones. So that's pretty personal. So you do want a structure that you can push a little bit against, but the key would be to roll and swing the legs up, and then to use your adjusters, which are your arms and your legs. Your arms are big adjusters in the world, aren't they? They're always adjusting something. Your hands are. So scoot your seat to the wall, and then let your hips kind of rest into the bolster. Okay, the body weight. Add a sandbag to the feet. Or if you have two sandbags, you can have one on your feet and you can have one on your ribs. Okay, so it wouldn't be at the belly, it would be a little bit off the belly. Otherwise, this is kind of like a waterfall pose, like as far as the pools of circulation in our body, the abdomen, the thyroid area just below the thyroid, and the throat. That's a nice area to bring some moisture focus, some fluidity. Open out the arms. Truly use that blanket if you're even just a tad chilly. It just feels good to have it because it doesn't have to be chilly. It can also be that you feel that's a tiny bit of weight, so it's grounding. Sometimes you use a blanket, even if it's really warm, just because you need that something on to get you to quiet down. So let the arms flow down from the shoulders. Feel how the neck is supported, and just kind of let the mind awareness kind of graze over the central field of the body into the heart, down into the belly. And gather your attention on the rhythm of your breath. Inhaling 4 to 5 counts, belly full. Exhale 5 to 6. Each exhale longer than the inhale. Not that you're trying to gain more exhale, but just keep that alternating pattern. Lengthening the exhales. Notice the weight on the pelvis onto the bolster, and then notice the weight of the skull onto the blanket. That can be these two weight centers. And see if you can let your head roll from side to side. Rest the brain. And then come back, just slow into center. Clearing the passageway out of your throat. Now carefully guide your feet just a little bit away from the wall so the heels aren't touching the wall. Notice if that adds pressure into the pelvis with the weight difference, not touching and pushing into a wall. So you're not relying on it really at all in this moment, no wall reliance. So we guide our knees to bend. And then as that approach gets a little quicker, you're going to take the sand away, however convenient or inconvenient that is. And then get a feel of your feet just touching the wall one more time and the spine in its pretty deep arch. Moving any blanket off of your core, roll to your side. Come around to sit up with your back on at the wall and you're seated on your bolster, please. So take a moment here to align the breathing muscles. You will notice even in listening to somebody how that changes from being on your back, it kind of floods the lungs. And then sitting up is a little easier. So recognize that contribution that you've done this whole class to your breathing cycle. And that's what we'll dedicate it towards. So bring your hands up to your heart.